back. Welcome back, my dears. We'll go for the next version of this topic. I'm saying here, actually, we'll share the screen. And we'll talk now about enforced standards. Also, the management enforce the standards and law and model behavior as well. So while management retains the authority to direct work, yes, management is having the authority to direct the work. However, it also carries significant responsibility to know the rights of employees. So the rights of employees, and to create an environment in which the unit can be successful. One aspect of this is to establish expectations and standards that will enable each employee individually and the unit collectively to accomplish its business needs. So everybody will be able to get his needs from the work and the business. A separate module devoted to expectation and standards it is the responsibility of management to establish, look at this, it is the responsibility of management to establish and ensure these standards are met. Secondly, management has responsibility to understand the applicable federal and state law. Thirdly, management must understand the organization's policies and procedures. That is, will help to reduce the struggle between the workers and the employers or the managers. Doing so requires an objectivity and modeling of behavior that the manager wants exemplified in the workplace. Managers are the sole model, guys. They are the sole models. They must show all the best of them, and they must be a sole model for the others. Managers should take care to conduct themselves at or above the standards which they expect employees to perform. Failure will lead to a very big problems. How about the documentation? What do you mean by the word documentation? Occasionally, an employee's inappropriate conduct or unsatisfactory performance will require the manager to address these issues in an objective manner. So must be documented. In some instances, an employee is unable or unwilling to correct his or her behavior or performance. In these instances, formal disciplinary action may be necessary. So if the employee did a bad job or he didn't do work based on the standards or whatever, that must be addressed formally with professional from the boss or the manager. Okay. The following questions will clearly be answered by good documentation. What are the performance or behavioral expectations of the position? What and when policies, procedures, guidelines have been communicated? How are expectations, procedures? When were success complaints shared and how were expectations communicated, and so on. By the way, the documentation can take many forms. And the documentation is important, and also when we come to see conversation is important also. Is important like the document itself. The documentation must indicate a conversation with the employee outlining your expectation. So the duration documentation can take many forms, such as provide examples of the employee's performance, like accomplishment letter, or informatory email, or so on, a letter from the customer, a written statement from witness, anecdotal notes of your observation, what you see as manager, notes representing the employee's perspective, summary notes of meeting with the employee. So those are the documentations if there was misconduct. So in the relationship between the workers and the managers, there's a supervisory framework. Supervisor may keep records and notes to subordinate employees. This is the X. The employee may inspect the supervisory file upon reasonable notices to the supervisor. At the employee's request, rebuttal documents will be placed in the supervisory file. If the employee serves his or her employment with the supervisory file will be expunged. These are examples because we're talking about how to establish a good relationship between the employer and the employee. Also, formal letters of deficiency. If there is something of deficiency of employee, we can carry on for a formal letter. At some points, employee's performance or behavior may warrant a formal letter to address deficiency. So I can tell him in a formal letter that you made mistakes or whatever. I showed this officially. When you write a notice of deficiency as manager, who are the various audience to whom you are writing? The employee, of course, the person, and the employee's representative union. So you are writing to these bodies and also third-party reviewers, such as arbitrators. It's in case of problems between the employer and the employee should be adhered and addressed by when you write the notice of deficiency, those are the parties. The employee himself who did the mistake, the employee's representative union to the union, and third party like the arbitrator. Usually, the manager should talk to the employee prior to issuing letter of caution or written reprimand. Talking to them helps put the letter in context. We'll go now to the contents of the letter. The first thing is the background. It contains information that puts the facts into the context and set the stage to help the reader understand how the employee know or should have known the rules or the standards that was not adhered to. So the background, I would say, the basics to the employee when you're talking to him about his mistakes or his faults, I would say that the rules say like this. So this is the background. The background also brings forward those necessary elements required to demonstrate justice case. The background section usually will be the first paragraph of a letter, but may follow the supporting facts section. Let's say examples of paragraph in the background section. You have been employed, length of employment, as example, 2 years, 3 years, as a position of title, as a position of supervisor or worker, since October 1999, as worker, machine worker. Your dates include blah, 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 these things. Okay. On date, second thing, you received a copy of the relevant department policy, attach the copy. This established justice case standard. On about date, you were advised by your supervisor to and not to. As licensed occupation, you are aware of the standards of conducting, whatever. You have to admit and adhere as employee. We are talking to him first, we show the backgrounds, the norms. We show the norms and everything regarding to adhere a positive behavior and to adhere a positive conduct. In a counseling memo issues, this also, so you are sending to him all things that he should adhere and he should have adhered and he should have been committed from the start itself. The facts or what's happening, supporting facts. The second part is the supporting facts. This section states the reason for which the employee being counseled or disciplined. This is show the mistakes of the employee. the mistakes which the employee did, but stated clearly, so in direct way. You tell him in direct way. Examples like what? At time and date, I observed you doing whatever, doing a mistake like you didn't work properly, you finish early than should be. You know that this is, we said in the grounds that you should finish by 2:30, but you finish like around 1:30 your work. On that you fail to complete specific assignments as instructed, give specifics so employee can identify exactly what occurred, name of customer, whatever. So you treated this customer in a bad way, or you denied the customer needs, or whatever. In a telephone conversation, you called her, specific language used. When I talked with you about your conversation, you agreed you lost your temper. Those are all examples of showing the mistakes which is done. Summary of conclusion. This section pulls together the backgrounds and the supporting facts. So I will compare now between the standards, what's supposed to be, and what really happened. In addition to other information such as mitigating circumstances or the employee's rebuttal of the facts, to articulate why the employee was fault-worthy and counseling or discipline inappropriate. The section might include information obtained from collateral sources, a brief response of the employee's rebuttal, reasoning as to why you conclude the employee is fault-worthy, and mitigating, and so on. So when responding to an employee's rebuttal of the facts, you do not need to go through point-by-point explanation. It may be sufficient to just state that you do not find the employee's statement to be mitigating, or you find witness to be credible. You do not need to argue the validity of the facts. So you don't need to talk about the standards anymore as employer, as owner of a business, or as employer. As long as he made a mistake, you don't need to argue about the standards because he knows very well the standards. You're just supplementing the standards with the facts which happened from him and what is the misconduct here. Action taken, this section describes what you conduct warrant discipline and informs the employee that you are imposing discipline or issuing a warning, whatever it is, in the conclusion. Like examples, your inappropriate conduct or performance is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. I am issuing this letter of reprimand to impress upon the seriousness of your conduct or performance. Failure to expect immediate, significant, and sustained improvement may result in discipline of and including dismissal from your job. Then the employee's signature. The section confirms that this issue had been discussed with the employee and he or she had received a copy of the notice. Those are the main points which we talk about when there is argue or a misconduct from the employee and need to be handled from the employer or the boss end. Shall see you in the next